Everybody lies in Silicon Valley. And I am not exaggerating. So only 1 out of 100 VC-backed founders actually has a successful financial exit for themselves. They paid me $100,000 to take the company. I've been building robots longer than anyone, and I can tell you that humanoids are not going to come in and do all the jobs anytime soon. Here I want to give you a little bit of a taste of reality, because your survival as a founder in a startup is dependent on you understanding how the world really works. You will see all kinds of LinkedIn posts that are trying to sell you a version of Silicon Valley that doesn't really exist. You hear about company 3 months in with 5 million in ARR and all of these amazing exits. You hear about founders that have 4 exits, 5 exits. Well, if you hear a founder talking about how many exits they've had, just remember that that exit doesn't mean successful company. What it almost always means, especially if they're just calling it a successful exit, what it almost always means is they failed. And I am not exaggerating. So only 1 out of 100 VC-backed founders actually has a successful financial exit for themselves. 1 out of 100. About 1 out of 30 VC-backed companies actually returns significant money to the fund, right? If they've taken investment from a fund, only about 1 out of 30 actually returns significant money. 1 out of 20 returns some money to the fund. So the other 19 out of 20, just gone. Didn't make it. For a whole bunch of reasons that I'm going to tell you about so that you can avoid them. Almost all of these things are avoidable. Ask yourself, if I'm a founder and I didn't have a successful exit and I failed, why would I lie about it? Why would I lie about it?
Because they want to have another chance,
Yeah, okay, that's one, because they feel like if they failed, they won't get another chance to be a founder. What's another? Yeah, recognition. They want to have a big ego, stand up and say, yeah, I'm a successful serial entrepreneur and I founded all these companies and had all these successful exits. Have you guys ever heard of an Acqui-Hire?
Yes, they get the founders as an employee, and then they say that we got a huge amount of money after that, but they are actually employed.
That's right. So just to repeat it, an Acqui-Hire is when another company buys your company, generally for nothing, and hires all the employees. And they will characterize it as a successful exit for an undisclosed amount. So I'll just tell you how this often goes. I acquired a company a couple of decades ago. It was a successful exit for them for an undisclosed amount. Do you know what the amount was? Negative $100,000. They paid me $100,000 to take the company. And this may sound absurd. Like, why would they do that? Well, they do that because they want to protect their reputation, they want to say it was successful, etc. That's all fine and good. But the problem is when you believe it, right? Because your job as a successful founder, that's the secret to good founders. Good founders predict the future. You don't have infinite resources. So you have to get really good at predicting how to invest your money, your time, your social capital, in order to get the outcome you want. You can't do that if you don't understand how it all works. So one of the things I want to talk to you a little bit about is the idea of co-founders versus solo founders. There's a lot of misinformation about this and a lot of debate. If you go to Y Combinator as a solo founder and you say, hey, I've got this amazing idea and it's great and they love it, what will they tell you? Anyone know? They'll say no. They'll say, come back when you have a co-founder. Why would they do that? Any ideas?
Because, it looks just a bit better because you meant to have like a complementary person
Sure.
in the startup. So
Spirit of teams or something.
Okay. So those are some of the excuses used. The reason actually turns out to be much more insidious. The reason they want you to have co-founders is because it dilutes your power. If you have co-founders, the investors are more powerful, relatively speaking, than the founders. It turns out that co-founder teams fail at about a rate of 5x over solo founders. Now you might ask yourself, why is that? Why do co-founder teams not work most of the time? There's a whole lot of reasons. One is, I think the latest statistic I heard was about 62% of startups fail directly due to co-founder drama. 62% of all startups fail directly due to co-founder drama. That's the direct contribution. Indirectly, there's all kinds of other problems, right? This power issue. When you have I'm bringing in outside investment, look first for strategic. Look second for angel investors directly from high net worth individuals and family offices. Yeah, following?
So, like, is it the strategic investor, like the individual or the company?
It's a company, generally.
Okay.
Almost always it's a company. You can have high net worth individual strategic investors as well, but generally it's a company. So for example, I got General Motors to invest in my robotics company. They put $10 million in and they committed to buy a whole bunch of robots, right? So, and part of it is their mentality is we're going to buy a whole bunch of robots. We want to take advantage of some of the upside. So it becomes this circular psychology, right? So you can play the business side on the investment side and back and forth. What you need to do is truly achieve product market fit with one customer. A lot of times I see people who don't really have a product yet. They don't really have product market fit. They'll go out and they'll like get letters of intent from 5, 10, 15 customers, and then they're trying to do all this stuff. Terrible idea. Start with one, maybe two. Get those customers addicted to you. Make them like you. Make them dependent on your service or product, and I will emphasize service. We're going to talk about this a lot. And then you actually can scale based on some kind of reality, right? And the reality is we're providing a product or service for a customer that actually needs it and uses it for an economically viable price. We're starting to be profitable, and now we can scale. Add the next customer, add the next customer, add the next customer. When you try and skip steps, it never works. This is the problem with the idea around rapid scaling and deep tech and AI native companies and all this stuff, that you can sort of just jump to scale. Over 50% of companies fail directly due to founder mental health issues. So 1 out of 2 companies that could have otherwise been successful fail due to founder mental health issues. So it's a really important thing to pay attention to. Yeah. You start with services. Now, why is that a good thing? There's a whole bunch of reasons. Your customer is your investor. Your customer actually has a real problem that they're willing to pay to have solved, right? If you cannot find a customer that's willing to pay anywhere from 10 to 100 times what they would eventually pay for a product to solve that problem, then there's probably not a market for what you're trying to do, right? So this is like product market fit validation 101. I'm getting a customer, they have a real problem, it's an important problem for them to solve, so they're hiring me to solve it for them. And so then the next piece was, why would they let me turn that into a product and sell it to their competitors? Right? Everybody says, well, why would the customer ever allow you to do that? The answer is because it's in their best interests. Right? They're paying me to build this thing. I tell them, hey, I'm going to build this thing, and I'm going to productize it, and then I'm going to go out and sell it. The reason that they want that is because then they're not the only ones paying for development, support, new features for years to come. Right? They don't care. They've got a problem. They want the problem solved. And this is one of the issues, I think one of the mistakes that young founders make all the time. They think the customer cares about how cool your tech is. Customer doesn't give a shit about how cool your tech is. They want their problem solved, and they want it solved in the most cost-effective, painless, frictionless way possible. So that's why the services to product approach is really great in many ways. Now, you can't always do that. And, people talk about like biotech, and we're trying to, develop a new drug. So biggest mistake, spending money. Don't spend money. Zero. Spend zero money if you can. The goal is to have what I would call infinite runway, right? And they're Snickers because, of course, what I'm saying in some sense is absurd, but it's also not. What is one way that you can spend zero money in your startup? Yes, make more than you spend, right? That's always the best answer, have income. But prior to that, yeah, well, better yet, keep your day job. Yeah, a lot of founders will come to me and say, hey, I want to start up a company in this space, and so what should I do? You know, I really want to go pitch my idea to investors. Can you help me? I'm like, no, go get a job. Go get a job in that industry, right? Because so often we get this idea of oh, I see that industry over there, and boy, they really could use some help. I'm going to come in, even though I don't know anything about it, I'm going to come in and I'm going to build a company that's going to solve all their problems. Oh, and it's super easy because I'm just going to throw ChatGPT at it, right? It just doesn't work. The successful founders are the ones who are coming from an industry and solving a problem that they know better than anyone else on the planet, right? So don't be so anxious to try and start something in an area that you don't truly understand. Now, I will say that trying and failing is very valuable. And a lot of times the discussion we were having earlier about lying about your success so that you don't appear like a failure is understandable. I've been building robots longer than anyone, and I can tell you that humanoids are not going to come in and do all the jobs anytime soon. And as a matter of fact, we've already had robots that can do most of the jobs humanoids are claiming to be able to do for decades. They are available today, they're safe, they're inexpensive, and they're not being deployed anywhere near the volumes that humanoid robot companies are claiming that their robots are going to be deployed. So how can we think that there's magically going to be this market that springs up for humanoid robots everywhere? Maybe some exotic uses, but it's just fiction. Right? But they go out then and they raise billions of dollars on this fiction, and it's going to crash. Ultimately, it's going to crash. Now, you could argue that a company like that, they've brought in so much money that it's almost too big to fail. So that's a strategy, right? And I was going to say this earlier. If your goal is to just go out and raise a bunch of money and have a startup and be a VC-backed founder and have that experience, great. And you'll learn a lot from it. But the chances of having a successful business as the outcome and having a successful financial exit as a founder are very, very small. Yeah.
Could you maybe expand a bit more? Because you just explained now that, right, there are humanoid robots that exist that could do everyone's jobs, but it's just not doing it at the moment. Could you expand why?
Oh yeah, no, they can't do the jobs.
Like literally?
Literally cannot do the jobs.
Even
So.
claim.
That's right. So for example, and you'll see it go down now, we were already supposed to have self-driving cars a decade and a half ago, right? People were talking about humans not getting licenses anymore to drive because it was all going to be self-driving cars. Self-driving cars are going to have an impact on our economy eventually. We're still a long way from that. And self-driving cars are about 1,000 times easier than humanoid robotics. It's going to take time. And it's true really of any business. Seeing a video of something, seeing something do a task in the lab, like for instance, we see these videos of the robot successfully folding the socks or folding a napkin. Most of the time that was take 723, right? And it failed the first 722 times. And then they got it on video looking pretty good one time. And then, of course, that's the video they post. And then what do we do as lay people? We're like, oh, look, robots know how to fold napkins now. Isn't that great? Maybe I'll buy one to fold my napkins in my restaurant. Turns out that they're actually really good machines that fold napkins that cost almost nothing. So why am I going to buy a humanoid robot to stand there at a table and very, very slowly fold napkins? Right, again, it's a good lessons learned. Because it's cool and high tech and seems like it can do a job, that doesn't mean it's actually good business. I can't tell you the number of times in my company even there was a better product and the customer should have been buying it all day long. They went with someone else because they liked them. Humans make all decisions emotionally. You may think you're being rational. You may think you're making logical decisions, but the way it actually works is that emotionally, you make a choice, and then you use logic to try and justify that choice. right? You defend your choice, you defend your decision with logic, but the decision was ultimately emotional. And what drives that emotion? Does this person make me feel good when I'm around them? Do I like them? So one of the number one things you can do to be successful as a founder is figure out how to be likable. Figure out how to make people like you. And I'll give you some tips on this. Do you have a relevant question or a different question?
No, it's a different.
Okay, so let me just say a couple things here. How do you make people like you? First of all, no one likes to be sold to. This is one of the things that I'm trying to help founders understand all the time. It's very subtle, subconscious. But if I go to General Motors, for example, I'll just use them as an example because I've had lots of interactions with them, and I ask an executive there for advice, I ask them to mentor me or to help me in some way, now they're invested in me. And all else being considered equal, when they're making a decision, subconsciously they want me to win. They don't want that other person to win that didn't ask their advice. They want me to win. This is the way business happens. When I got my first big break, it was from somebody that I had interacted with 2 consulting jobs ago, and I made a good impression on him. He calls me up out of the blue and says, "Hey, Daniel, I've got this new project that the Navy dropped on my lap, and I just thought of you because I always enjoyed working with you. Is this something that you might be able to help me out with?" That ultimately turned into a $200 million contract for me, right? Simply because even though that person at that time had nothing to give me, I made them like me. I was kind, I was helpful, I was cheerful, I didn't have a big ego, right? People do business with people they like. So that's a super important thing. And there's all kinds of other things that you can do. I think in the near term, what we'll see is what I would call the novelty play. I actually wrote an article about this, about iRobot, a decade or so ago, right? Why was iRobot successful selling Roomba vacuum cleaners? Not because they worked. As a matter of fact, they barely worked. Why were they successful at selling them? Because it was cool, right? I could have a robot vacuum my carpet. Well, it turns out that none of those people who bought iRobots didn't also buy a normal vacuum cleaner. They all still had normal vacuum cleaners, right? It was a pet. It was a toy. It's going to be the same thing with humanoids. They're going to be, again, like what I would call exotic uses. Let your imagination go wild. That will, have rich people buying humanoid robots. Most of them will end up in the closet because the novelty will wear off and people get tired of them. And just like the Roombas, right? There's millions of Roombas around the world in the closet because it actually turns out that most of the time it's more of a pain to vacuum your rug with a Roomba than to just get out the vacuum in 2 minutes and vacuum it and you're done, right? Same type of thing. Using this technology is going to be really cool and really fancy. It's going to be a status symbol. Yeah, I've got a humanoid robot. You're going to invite your friends over and you're going to have your humanoid robot serve drinks, right? Wow. Very quickly the novelty will wear off.